stories will thrive. Welcome to another video by the Blue Tongues of Hell for some more Hyldr Chronicles. This chapter is called Midnight Hunters. Winter was at an end, but the dire cold wind felt like one last desperate effort to freeze our life to death before giving up the ghost. Spirals of snow bombarded the meadows around the town of Vanaheim. Each flake was like a persistent white spider, fidgeting away to slip under your eyelids. Hailstones pummeled your ears to burrow a passage through to your skull. Snakes of wind pestered the crack between your lips, stifling you senseless and flaring your nostrils. Kara coughed her lungs out, but worried little about the infernal blizzard. Her pale fur faded, and she shifted back to freckles and less hairy legs. Skuld, where are you? She cried out in thought, shivering in the snow. The havoc in Vanaheim had de-escalated, but she still had to make it alive to the woods. For the second time this winter, someone managed to catch her by surprise again, grab her by the legs and fling her over their shoulder. She was too weak to fight back and watched massive footprints in the snow lead the trail away from the realm of men. This bulky man was helping her. A faint bouquet of torchlights in the distance swayed back and forth until dark cobwebs of spiny bushes and branches snuffed them out. She was home. Nebelwood. The tall man dumped Kara onto the snow without uttering a word. She coughed up more blood, thumping her chest to dislodge whatever she felt was stuck in her windpipe, then tried to call out to the stranger, wandering back towards Vanaheim. Why did you help? Why would any one of you do that? He paused for a while, looking up at the feral skies. Kara could only see his monolithic silhouette, but hadn't yet noticed the man wasn't clothed either. However, she did hear him say,
"One of us. Since when do you care about us? All you want is to paint the world red and lap it up like a well-trained pup. Go back to your new master and stay there.
He said telepathically, morphing into an intimidating horse, galloping off through the storm. Kara knew that there were Hyldr spies in various villages, and she also knew that some Hyldr had been doing their job for so long that their allegiance had gone astray. Some were said to have become domesticated. Freya, was that you? Said Kara, collapsing onto a bed of ferns. It was warm now. The air had a moist smell of roots and fresh soil, but also of recently gnawed bones. The metallic tang of blood mixed with a peaty scent of spiderweb roots gently woke Kara, who was resting on a mossy floor. She opened her eyes and met her sisters. Skuld touched Kara's mouth with 2 fingers, suggesting there was nothing she needed to say. Then parted her lips to pour a warm clay cupful of blood down her throat. Drink up and rest, sis dear. The warm moon should be gone by the time you have recovered. Tell me all you need to say when the hunger has dwindled, and I will listen this time, I promise. Refer watched the 2 sisters from a corner of the fox den. He was crouched like a vulture, blood dripping from his grey lips. The carcass of a deer lay before him, and there was little left to share with his hosts. Kara drifted back to sleep, and Skuld softly blinked, indicating to Refer that he could be excused. The deadly creature changed into a red fox and left them in peace. Skuld shivered at the sight of the dead buck. The night was young, and there was so much life left to be reaped. Stroking Kara's white hair, Skuld thought of how the sour relationship with their human neighbours was taking its toll. Voluspa was certainly a formidable leader, and none of the Hyldr doubted her incentive to keep them safe. So why was she playing the Norse woman's games? Why was she wasting their energy? She was squeezing them like sponges, bleeding out every last drop of life, and all the while brainwashing and exhausting the human population. But to what purpose? Skuld knew that Voluspa was counting on her to step in as Norn monarch of the third well, Orphan Webs. Since the late monarch, Ordor, had been murdered by hunters, nobody was willing to replace her. After the death of Ordor and her unborn son, Skuld had been appointed as next in line, which was not a reward that any Hyldr envied, and with good reason. Becoming a Norn monarch required undergoing an unpleasant ritual. It wasn't just the idea of cutting one's own eye out and dropping it into the well of wisdom that put candidates off, or chopping off the head of a friend or foe to dip into the sacred waters. It was mainly because of the divine gift that the lucky Norn would be granted if they survived drowning in the water of wisdom. Knowing everything there ever was, or will be, must be satisfying. Though I can imagine it being a subtle curse, too. Hyldr must have known what was about to happen to her. Why did she let the Vanaheim butchers end her life that way? Did she see a greater outcome after her family's demise? Or was she just utterly depressed? With nothing new to discover, one's life must feel like another autumn leaf, ready to fall into the flowing stream below. Watching cycles within cycles rotate, knowing the same mistakes are to be repeated eternally. In her sleep, Kara said, "Refer is the key." Perhaps she is, sister. Perhaps she is. But how important is this killer? And someone else's plans? To be honest, I'm fed up being in the dark. Apparently all I have to do is pluck an eye out and hook your pretty head to my belt. Skuld paused a moment. She gazed at tiny droplets of water that hung from moss on the ceiling like clusters of spiders' eyes spying on her. She was expecting a Norn monarch to chime in and scold her. Nobody did. Besla, the Norn monarch of Milkwell, is missing. Voluspa must be away. After all, this is what is expected of me. Mutilate myself, kill a friend, and drink the waters of wisdom. Before contemplating the idea of actually doing that, Skuld thought she should practice sharing her own wisdom. Over the years, she had watched the men and women of Vanaheim rise and fall without showing any signs of aging herself. She had seen the island split into 3 hateful realms. She had seen the love of her life slip away from her and marry a human, have children, and die. And now one of these children was toying with her people. She deserves to know more. This troublesome Hyldr. Just a little spark in a field of hay. Soon they sat alone next to the quiet, howling cauldron. Where have you gone, my dear? It was good to be out of our forest prison, despite the deadly storm that perhaps Kyōko had nothing to do with this time. And yet another Norseman had whisked her away from danger. But would she be stepping into an even worse quagmire this time, if the blizzard didn't swallow them up? Come to think of it, things aren't actually as bad as I thought. The utter United disaster, the deadly waves and sea snakes were definitely worse than being locked up in a cave. Our poorly heated sweet shop. Spring is coming. The worst is behind us, thought Kyōko, squinting as the snow bit her skin. Hyldr wasn't quite sure what was happening or how he was feeling. Was it guilt for saving this strange yet attractive young woman from Hyldr and Vanaheim's cruelty? He decided that living in the shadows with the Princess of Vanaheim was not a life at all. It was driving him insane. Having to fight the father of his beloved was a terrible quandary. And the war of the three realms was exhausting his patience and self-control, to a point where he was ready to do something as foolish as this. Perhaps this will be the straw that breaks the fjord horse's back. The whistle of the icy wind died down for a while. Hyldr rode at a canter as they approached the grove on Vigrid Plains, where Hyldr and he would generally meet. When Hyldr looked round to check if Kyōko was all right, he was startled to see her ghostly wide-open eyes peering above him. The horse pulled at the reins and skittishly picked up momentum, almost flinging the two riders off the saddle. Hyldr felt his lungs shrink when he saw a winged creature swooping down towards them. It was gaily black with yellow markings, long as half a dozen horses. A mane of white hair adorned its skull and backbone, crested in horns.
The Nidhogger!
Hyldr cried. Hold on tight. Kyōko gripped Hyldr's waist as the prince tried to control his mount, dangerously careering into the darkness. The dragon dived at them, letting its hind legs drop. Its carmine claws swished past the riders' heads as they ducked, and the wind began to howl again, erupting with battering hailstones, as if in connivance with the creature. Hyldr yelled at his horse to slow down, but Geirahod would not respond. They heard a violent snap, and the earth felt as though it had caved in. For a hovering split second, they felt the sickness rising, and then were catapulted forwards into the snow. Hyldr's horse whined in pain, rolling on his back with broken legs, spraying blood onto the white plains. Hyldr shook his head to retrieve his senses. He saw they had crashed into a clutter of shields and smashed carts. So much debris. The lands looked like 100 battles had been fought there over the last year. He couldn't understand what he was looking at, but abandoned that troubling thought as the dragon returned. Kyōko had a gut feeling that the beast had no intention of missing its prey this time. She saw their terrible fate gliding towards them through the snow, and her body temperature rose with simmering terror. Tiny flakes of electricity crackled around her. Hyldr was too focused on the imminent threat to care for his wounded Yor, or observe the sudden weather anomalies. He clenched his sword's hilt and stood his ground. As the dragon flew closer, snowfall increased, but the wind suddenly twisted and blasted in the predator's direction. Lightning spread through the clouds like leafless branches, and thunder shook their bodies. Shards of ice rained on the dragon, and a hailstorm with electric shocks showered its scales. Nevertheless, it pursued its prey with angry jaws wide open. Kyōko saw the face of her dead lover from Otarunai, being cut to pieces. His face melted into the blizzard of ice that was lacerating her skin. And when she saw the dragon diving towards Hyldr, she screamed so loud she thought she had gone deaf. Tree trunks of wind thudded the meadows, and before the dragon could snatch Hyldr's head, a tornado whisked it out of sight. Kyōko fell to her knees in the snow. The wind died down, and feathers of snow gently fell. Hyldr knew the tale of the Nidhogger. He couldn't help feel that this demon had been sent to punish him and Kyōko. A curse, the swines of Anaheim had called her. However, the gods had shown pity on him. The fiend had been removed from the battlefield. But why? His horse had suffered a different fate, with cracked bones sticking out of its poor legs.
Gerard, my faithful companion.
Hyldr couldn't believe he was about to lose his stallion. And here of all places, near the grove, where he could drop the mask of pretense, on a field where so many battles had torn the island of 3 realms apart, and where many more had taken place that he could not recall. Kyōko rubbed her bruised elbow and wiped off the snow clinging to her bearskin coat. She didn't dare make any assumptions about what had just occurred. She erased from her mind the haunting images of her demolished village, her despicable dead lover, her parents, and watched Hyldr stroke Gerard's head. He drew his sword wiped his eyes dry with the back of his hand. Gerard violently thrashed about, but Hedil avoided the fatal hooves and brought his blade hammering down into the horse's heart. The legs twitched like a shrimp until the horse wiggled one last time. Two ghostly volutes slithered from Gerard's nostrils and dissipated into the slate sky.
Come,
Hedil said mournfully, helping Kyōko up and leading the way to the small wood. In a glade, they found a large rock, partially smothered in creeping roots. They rested under an old oak tree that had sheltered the mossy stone from the snow. Kyōko stared at Hedil's gloomy face. She wondered if this sudden savior was going to be as helpful as expected. Always so disappointing. He was covered in blood splatter and looked like he had lost his resolve. I'm sorry for your horse, she said, trembling from the cold and the thought of the tornado. Hedil wiped his face, spreading the horse blood over his lips. He nodded and looked up through the oak branches as if in search of a solution to his troubles. He gave his upper lip a quick lick. The snow had stopped falling, and the dark clouds were gradually giving way to a dense black field of stars. A faint disk of light wobbled under the drifting clouds and gave the grove surroundings fluctuating glimpses of visibility. Hedil stood up and left her there. She imagined he had gone to fetch some wood. This gilt-haired man with soft features wasn't as gallant as she had thought, or reassuring either. Better than being defiled by forest ghosts, she thought, wrapping her cold arms and legs under her coat. The clouds sailed east, and the old oak trees and monolithic rocks were bathed in blue light from a radiant full moon. Hedil hadn't returned yet, and she could see piercing bright eyes all around her, flickering in the dark. Kyōko thought she heard the branches snap and hoped Hedil would soon be getting a fire going. When the Prince of Vanaheim did lumber back to her, Kyōko slapped a hand over her mouth to avoid screaming. Black drops of blood plopped onto the snow beneath him. Hedil wasn't just splattered with a few spurts of blood from his dying horse. He was caked in it. He slumped to the floor and sat there in a catatonic state. Bits of torn flesh and cracked bones hung from his hairy body, suggesting he must have gorged himself with his own horse's meat. Kyōko saw that his nails had grown similar to Refer's claws. I must be a magnet to madness, she thought, calming her nerves with memories of sewing and singing with her grandmother. Hyldr felt he was floating in a pool of bliss. The slight movements his muscles made sent tingles of pleasure throughout his burgundy red body. Heady moon rays stroked his skeletal back, spreading soothing warmth through his bones. All the while, a gust of rage was building up deep inside. Kyōko shivered when the drog's head jerked upwards and his eyes locked onto her skin. He slowly uncoiled from a sitting position and crawled over to the hazy vision of prey sitting opposite him. Hyldr sniffed Kyōko's skin and licked her neck. Without a drop of fear, Kyōko said, "Kenas unarbe, do you wish to eat me?" The drog retracted his tongue and closed his jaws. "Don't worry, I don't mind if you do. But you've had more than enough for one evening," she said, stretching out her arm and pulling back her coat sleeve. "If you must, try a finger. They are said to be tasty." She knew she had gone mad a long time ago. Hyldr hesitated, understanding this human's honeycombed words. The hunted woman was not afraid, which nullified his desire to slash her to pieces and rip out her. He briefly remembered Hyldr's unborn child he had devoured, then instantly forgot as Kyōko's pale hands stroked his forehead. Kyōko squeaked when Hyldr dug his fangs into her index finger. He gently sucked on it like a lamb suckling his mother's teats and lay down on her lap. Her energy was ebbing away and the glade was beginning to blur. In fact, the clouds had returned, and the moon was now masked behind an opaque sheet of slate. Hyldr shriveled back to his human form, while Kyōko stroked his head, covering the young man in Asmon's coat. "What happened?" he asked sheepishly, already fearing the answer.
Are you harmed?
I have seen worse, replied Kyōko, wrapping her finger in more cloth from her yukata. Hyldr touched the fabric and started to shiver. Don't worry. I know what you are. You growl a lot and make a hell of a mess. But in the end, you're all just hungry kids. Hyldr didn't want to think too much about what he was remembering from similar outbursts as this one. He didn't want to believe it was true.
I am the son of King Jarl and Queen Asgard. This isn't possible.
Believe me, anything is possible, said Kyōko wistfully. I've come to realize the worst is only just around the bend. I thought the cherry trees were about to blossom, and all I got was bloody orcs. I don't really care what happens now. Why worry about what you know is going to crush you? Hyldr rose to his feet, putting on Asmund's coat. He felt sick and closed his eyes when he saw all the stained moss.
Let's get out of here. We don't have long before sunrise to make it home. Do you still want to follow me?
Kyōko got up and crossed her arms. You promised me more than what I already got out of Vanaheim. Please, show me the better sides, if you can. Hyldr opened the long bearskin coat and invited Kyōko to join him. She gave a shy smile, and Hyldr wrapped the white fur around her. Kyōko didn't mind his bare, sticky skin, and was happy to not be freezing to death. Their body heat helped them cross the rocky grove and plains, and they somehow avoided starving wolves and other midnight hunters. See you soon for the next chapter of the Hyldr Chronicles.